everyone, and welcome to our first EISA workshop for 2026. My name is Buseletsa Mukano, and I am from the Office of the Registrar and also the contact person for anything related to EISA. Important to note, the session is 3 hours, so it is starting now at 9 until 12 o'clock. Please stay until the end to get all the information firsthand. To ask questions, you can make use of the Q&A function on MS Teams, YouTube, or Facebook. You'll also have an opportunity to ask questions at the end, towards the end of the workshop. Also, you will be requested to complete a survey to confirm your attendance and rate the workshop, and this presentation will be made available on the website link, which is indicated below. In terms of the program for the workshop, welcome addresses by myself, Buseletsa Mukano. As I said, I'm the manager for pre-reg and examination. We also have our two facilitators, that's Dr. Dean Johnston and Ms. Raisa Khan. So between the two facilitators, then they will take us through the general and calculation section and also go through the examples. We'll have Q&A and a break. Then we'll continue, have another break before we go through now the remote examination, navigating the website on how to access documents, how to book for the exam, the EISA, as well as getting our results. And then we'll just look at the questions that were not addressed on the Q&A function. Thank you, and Dr. Johnston will take us through now through our presentation.
Thank you, everyone. So welcome to today's presentation. We realize that for some students, this is a exam in terms of you accessing the scope of practice for the first time. We also have students that are starting, they post-basic assistants that have been in the workplace and now are wanting to write the EISA to unlock the scope of practice, the full scope of practice for a basic pharmacist assistant, and perhaps pursuing post pharmacist assistant post-basic studies. So thank you very much for the introduction. I just want to check, Buseletsa, would you like me to project from my side, or are you going to be projecting from your side?
No, please do project on your side.
Okay. So just to confirm that you can see my screen.
What is yet, Dr. Johnson?
Okay.
If you're struggling, I can take over on your behalf. Oh, but
there we go. Okay.
Yes.
So this is an open book examination with 100 multiple choice questions. Remember, a multiple choice questions, for those that aren't familiar with it, you will have a question followed by 4 options, and you need to select the most appropriate answer for that question. The overall pass mark is 50%, and there's no negative marking, which means that if you get a question incorrect, you don't get any marks deducted from the overall total. The time for the examination is 3 hours and 30 minutes. So we break this down into 2 components of the examination. It's one examination with 2 sections. The first section is on calculations, and this comprises of 16 questions. However, for this part of the examination, you need to obtain a minimum of 8 of these questions correct. So you need to answer 50% of the 16 questions correctly. There are far more questions that relate to general practice. General practice, then, remember, would be split between the different sectors. So we are then having a look at community, hospital, manufacturing, etc. So those are the different types of questions, and general practice would be everyday things that you do within those facilities, such as management of stock, perhaps, or housekeeping, etc. So it's those tasks that you are involved in. Remember that you will, regardless of whether you plan on working in hospital or community or where you work currently, all pharmacist assistants or learner basic assistants will write the same examination. So you would need to answer questions relating to all sectors of pharmacy. The sub minimum once again applies of 50%. So for this, half of 84 would be 42. So you need to get 42 questions correct in this part of the examination. Another important thought is that remember that this is an online open book examination, which may be quite different to the formats that you've used before. So that's important that we're going to give you many tips in today's workshop about how to approach an open book examination, what types of references you need, and then some information about the online examination system. Okay, so as mentioned, there are 4 sectors of pharmacy where we draw questions from. So it's community, institutional, being both public and private sectors, manufacturing, and wholesale. So what you really need to start to ask yourself is, what can a basic pharmacist assistant do within each one of these sectors? So our questions are based on the sectors of pharmacy, but they're also linked to your curriculum. And within the curriculum, we have exit level outcomes. And then we look at those exit level outcomes and create questions based on tasks that you perform within the workplace. So there are really 2 components that make up the blueprint, or how we map questions within this examination, both the sectors as well as the exit level outcomes. So there are 4 exit level outcomes, and I do want to just go through this just to have a look at it. We've got ELO 1, 2, 3, and 4. So the first one looks at basic scientific knowledge to provide technical support in delivering pharmaceutical services. This is quite a broad ELO, and it really encompasses a lot of our definitions, the work environment, your scope of practice, etc. The next one is exit level outcome number 2. This is providing technical support for receiving, storing, picking, packing, and distributing of orders. This is a lot of your stock management. And those that are working within the community and hospital sectors, this is most likely what you do on an everyday basis. Within this, you would need to refer to documents such as GMP, GWDP, and GPP. The third exit level outcome looks at the manufacturing. So manufacturing, packaging, and repackaging. And really important is that here we have non-sterile medicine and scheduled substances. So specific to the scope of practice of a basic pharmacist assistant is that you may only handle non-sterile medicines. So for example, preparing of chemotherapy stock would be out of your scope of practice, or manufacturing of eye drops would be out of your scope of practice. And then exit level outcome number 4 looks at technical support for the compounding, manipulation, preparation of non-sterile medicines and scheduled substances in compliance with standards as described in GPP and GMP. Okay, so those are our 4 exit level outcomes. You don't need to know these exit level outcomes, but you do need to think about what is the work that you have done and how do these exit level outcomes relate to your scope of practice and the tasks that you do, because this forms the blueprint of your examination. So if we have a look at where the questions are coming from, majority of the questions, and this is really exclamation mark, majority of the questions are coming from exit level outcome number 1, which remember was that knowledge and foundational principles, and then exit level outcome number 2, which dealt with stock management. So majority of the examination is coming from those 2 parts. Then we have a smaller amount at 15% from manufacturing and 20% compounding. And this is overall. So what I would like you to do is think about when you're preparing for this examination, do you have enough references and have you prepared sufficiently to cover the types of questions that you're going to encounter, and perhaps to spend a bit more time looking at exit level outcome number 1 and 2. Okay, so in terms of exit level outcome number 1, 40% of the examination is made up of questions. And these, I really want to just have a look at keywords here. This applies to the legislation, specifically the scope of practice. So this is your scope of practice. And remember that all the questions that we ask are always going to be within the South African context. Next, we've got the ethical and professional conduct. Again, the conduct is in relation to your scope of practice. Then we've got basic pharmaceutical terms and concepts. And this is very much in terms of, could you define a tablet, a capsule? Would you know where these are administered to, etc.? So those are the types of pharmaceutical terms and concepts that you need to master before coming into the examination. And then you need to take basic scientific principles and perform basic scientific calculations. And we are going to go through examples of these calculations and the types of calculations that you are most likely going to encounter. Next is exit level outcome number 2, and this is where 25% of the examination questions come from. Remember, this was about stock management. So this is distribution and control of the stock of medicines, scheduled substances, and medical devices according to standard operating procedures as per CGMP, GPP, and GWDP. Pick, packing, and securing orders. So that's important. And remember, again, this is in line to what you can do as a basic pharmacist assistant. Completing documents and maintaining of records, and participating in stock counts. So you can expect questions, 25% of questions being both general and calculation, coming from this section. Then we've got 15% that is related to manufacturing. Here we've got apply pharmaceutical and CGMP. Remember that GMP is good manufacturing practice. And here we're looking at the underlying principles and legislative requirements of manufacturing, packaging, or repackaging. And again, importantly, non-sterile medicines. Organize and prepare resources, materials, and equipment. Handle these materials with regard to environmental and storage conditions. Participate in the manufacturing processes. Participate in packaging and repackaging. And then lastly, to complete all documents and to maintain records. Then we've got our final exit level outcome, which is number 4. This is where we've got 20% of the questions coming from. And remember, this in particular is around compounding. So what formulations can you compound as a basic pharmacist assistant? And this would be a solution, a suspension, and a semi-solid. So semi-solid is something like a cream or an ointment. Again, all of these would be non-sterile compounded products. Again, questions would relate to record keeping as well as cleaning of equipment. All of this, remember, has got to be outlined in relevant SOPs. This also includes housekeeping activities. So, for example, how do we make sure that the stock is kept in a safe environment as well as in a clean environment? And then lastly, the basics of computers. So, for example, where would you generate a document? Or what would you use PowerPoint for as compared to Excel? So those are the kinds of questions that you may come across. Okay, so when we have a look at questions, we have 3 different types of questions or 3 different ways of thinking. So some of the questions you will find maybe are straightforward. This comes from the notes that your provider has given you, or this may come out straight from a textbook. And these are our knowledge and comprehension questions. So this, for example, would be a definition. Define a tablet. Then we take those same concepts and we put them in a way where you are now expected to apply the content. So it means that you know the basics and you're able to then take this information and apply it within the workplace. And lastly, we have questions that really mean that you need to evaluate the work. And when we go through these examples, especially when it comes to the general questions, I will point out examples of knowledge, application, and evaluation questions so that you will be able to have a look at this. Each examination that we have has the same number of knowledge, application, and evaluation questions. So the standard of each examination is the same. Okay, so in terms of the preparation, it's very important for you to understand that this is a stressful situation. So we need to take time just to walk you through the different processes. You guys are already on the training, so you will know when the examination date is and where you're going to write the examination. What is important is that after today's session, you're going to start thinking about what resources you will need and where you are going to get these. The next one is, how can I prepare? So in terms of preparation, where have I stored these documents? What references do I need? And how do I use it? How do I find the information? Can I search through this document quickly enough to find the answers? We're also going to speak a little bit about how you're going to approach. What kind of a approach are you going to take to this examination? So are you going to have a look at the question, identify the statements that you know straight away, and then only look up or reference those that you can't remember at that stage? So we need to go in with a bit of a strategy when we write this exam. And luckily for you, there's a practice examination as well, which means that you will be able to test out your preparation and your strategy for the exam before you write the actual exam. You will familiarize yourself with the platform, etc., so that on the day, you're taking away all that anxiety about the unknown. And then lastly, we're going to talk a little bit about the exam day. So what do you need to bring? How does the examination platform work? And remember, we've already talked about the length of the exam. And it's important that we consider the length of the exam because you need to go in knowing how long you can spend on each question. Okay, so in terms of preparation, the first thing that you need to have a look at is what kind of reference material are you going to use? So if we have a look at this, we need to make sure that you have access to these. Also, it's very important that you're keeping up to date with the latest developments and information. So we know that with the new education standards, we had an updated scope of practice. So it's important that you know what has changed. You need to know how you are going to use each of the reference books. So for example, if you're using a physical book, how are you going to look up that information? Where is the index? How do I find the topics? We would like you to be present in your work environment, look at the SOPs. But at the same time, I just want to draw your attention to sometimes in the workplace, we aren't always exposed to the right practice. So I do want you to reflect on what you do in the workplace and how that may differ from what you can do from a legal perspective. So that's important that you answer the questions from a legislative point of view and not perhaps bad habits that we may have within the workplace. Check current events. So pandemics, epidemics, what's happening locally and globally. Your course notes, if you have recently completed the course or maybe you completed a while ago, you need to check the information in it. Is all the information up to date? So, for example, has there been a change of scheduling? Has there been an update in the scope of practice? So, when we say check that it's valid, is that we are part of a profession that is going through change all the time, and you need to make sure that you are keeping abreast to the latest information. We always say that in an open book examination, never bring in a reference or use a reference that you haven't used before, because this often just creates panic. And then lastly, ask assistance from your colleagues and supervisors. So ask them about how they may have approached examinations or what references they think may be valid. So all of these things are really food for thought at the moment as we take you through the various sections of the exam. Okay, so at this point in time, I'm going to hand over to Raisa, who is going to take us through the calculation questions.
Okay, thank you so much for that. I'm just going to share my screen quickly and then carry on from there. Okay, can I just confirm that everyone can see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you so much for that. Good morning, everyone. My name is Ms. Raisa Batti, and I will be taking you through the calculation section. Okay, so as mentioned before and explained to you, the calculations forms a certain part of your paper, and the distribution of the calculation questions according to the ELOs is as follows. So you already have an idea of ELO 1, 2, 3, and 4, but in this case, ELO 1 makes up 31%, ELO2 makes up 19%, and ELO4 makes up 50%. So you can see in this case, ELO4 makes up the majority of this calculation section. So when you're studying, please bear that in mind. Okay, so what can the types of calculation questions can you expect? So we know that EL01 is your basic scientific principles like conversions. For example, things like milligrams to grams, kgs to grams, or mils to liters. So those are your basic conversions. In terms of EL02, you have stock management, your stock consumption. So for example, in the start of the month, you ordered this amount, you ended up using this amount, how much is left. So examples will be things like that. Reconciliation calculations, so where you have a table, you've got different items, and basically how do you calculate stock management in those cases. And then the cost of value of the stock. So you'll be given like one item costs this much. So if you have 10 items, how much does it cost? Then ELO4 is compounding manipulation and preparation of extemporaneous compounding. So you will have to calculate quantities of ingredients according to a formula to prepare an extemporaneous formulation, meaning you will be given, for example, like your ingredients and say, okay, you need to make 500 mils of this. So how much of each ingredient according to the formula you would need to use. Reconciliation calculations in repackaging operations, similarly to the stock management, at the end of the month or something, towards the end of the month, how much should you have? How much do you have left? So those reconciliation calculations. So in terms of recommended textbooks for calculations, in terms of calculations, HC Excel is a good reference. For pharmaceutical practice, it's AJ Winfield and IO Edifiago, the fourth edition. For pharmaceutical practice, AJ Winfield, J.A. Rees, and I. Smith. So it's important to remember that textbooks are valuable before the exam time rather than during the exam because you have a time limit. You don't want to be sitting there paging through something you've never seen before or looking for things. So you must be mindful of your time. Rather, use it as a reference in maybe if you forgot something or you need to look up something, but you shouldn't be saying it for the first time when you are writing. So not all the calculation types will be that are in this textbook may be applicable to the examination you will be writing. So remember, it doesn't mean because the calculations are there, you must do them. Go and look at your ELOs and what is relevant to your curriculum and what is expected of you. Okay. Sorry, I'm just gonna make it slideshow. Okay, then in terms of tips and advice, tips, you need to understand the principle, not memorize the calculation. So in terms of calculations and mathematics, it's not something you can learn by heart because although the formula might remain the same, the numbers change. So understand the principle and all you do is apply. It's the same concept, but the numbers change. So you need to know your units. What are your standard international units? Example, percentage, weight per volume is equal to grams per 100 mils. These are things you are expected to know. They won't be given to you. In terms of equipment, you need to use a scientific calculator. Make sure you use the same one to practice so that you're going to use in the exam because you might end up using a different calculator and not understanding the setting. Make sure your batteries are charged or full. Know the settings of your calculator. Make sure you have paper and pen so that when you are doing your rough work or calculating on the side, it's easily accessible to you. Okay, carrying on with the tips, you need to select the correct formula. That's where everything begins. If you already select the incorrect formula, you are already going to be ending up with the incorrect answer. So this first step, you must select your correct formula. When you transcribe, that means when you are you've written it down or you've done the calculation, now you're putting the answer in, for example, you must double check against the question and that you've used the correct figures in your formula. So make sure even when you're on your calculator, double check that it's the correct numbers, it's the correct units, because sometimes when you're rushing, you might make a mistake. If possible, estimate a range for your answer. This means, let's say for an example, if the answer was, if the answer was you need a bottle of the certain syrup, but your answer came to 1,000 milliliters or 1 liter, then you can think, no, this doesn't look correct. It's too much. My answer is too big. Let me put it back in my calculator. Maybe I put an extra zero somewhere. So always think of it logically. Does it make sense that I can be taking 1 liter of something when it's only a bottle of medication? Again, double check your calculation, meaning try like 3 times on your calculator, because if you make a mistake the first time, you check it the second time, the third time you make sure that it's correct, because we can always make mistakes when punching in numbers. Okay, then carrying on with tips, conversions. So you need to know how to convert between units. So my advice is you get something like this, a table, and if possible, commit it to memory. It's the easiest way. So when it comes to conversions, you know, to move from this milligrams to grams, you divide by 1,000. To move from grams to milligrams, you multiply. So it's the easiest way. Then you are not searching and looking for things, because this is something basic that you can refer to. Or keep this handy, make one of these for yourselves, or print it out or something like that. Keep it with your references so it's easy to refer to, because these are easy calculations which people can miss out on. You might multiply instead of times. So in this case, if we look from left to right, we are going from micrograms to milligrams to grams to kgs. So on the left is the smallest, and on the right, it goes up to the biggest one. So microgram is smaller than kg. So in order to move from the smaller ones to the bigger ones, you'll see the top black arrow. You divide by 1,000 each time. Whereas it's the opposite with the bottom. To move from the bigger one, which is kg on the right, to the left, you multiply by 1,000. So know the difference between them and know how to calculate these conversions. Okay, carrying on between conversions, this is now your microliters, your mils, your liters, and your kiloliters. So it's the same concept. If we're moving from left to right, it goes from the smaller units to the bigger one. And going right to left, it's the opposite. So again, with the black arrows, when you are moving from the smaller units to the bigger ones, you divide by 1,000. When at the bottom with the yellow arrows, when you are moving from the larger one to the smaller one, you multiply by 1,000. Okay, so these are important. Know your conversions, whether it's for mass or for volume, because you will be tested on it. All right, then in terms of time management, you need to maximize your time. So you have around 42 minutes because you have 16 multiple choice questions for the calculations, which means it's approximately 2.6, or let's say 2.5 minutes per question. So even when you're doing the practice questions, time yourself to make sure you are keeping within this time limit. Importantly, there is no negative marking, and do not leave anything blank. So try your best, answer all questions, because you won't be penalized. There's no negative marking. All right, and then we're going to do some examples on calculations. You can use this link or scan the QR code, and I'm going to give you about 10 minutes. So you select the answers, then we'll check at the responses, and then we will go through each one briefly, and then look at the solutions to them. Okay, so I'm just checking the time now. It's about 9:30. I'll give you to 9:40, 9:45, around there. Okay, then we will come back and go through the solutions. So you have 10 minutes, it's 10 questions. I know I'm giving you a little less time than what you expected, but these are just practice questions. Okay, welcome back everyone. It's 9:45, so I assume you had a chance to work through these, and I'm just going to try and access the responses, and then I will also share the page for us to go through each one of the calculations briefly so that you can see how we arrived to the answer. Okay, I'm just going to okay, I'm not sure why. Okay, let me try again. Okay. Sorry about that. I'm just trying to share my screen to show the responses. Okay, let me just okay, I'm not sure. It seems to be stuck because I can't move down. I'm not sure if anyone can please assist me to share the responses if possible.
I'll just
Okay, thank you so much. So we can see that I'm just going to briefly go through the responses just to check the majority of the answers, and then we'll go through, I'll share another screen to show you how we got to the answers. So as you can see in question one, it was asking us to convert 5 grams to milligrams. So 66% or around there chose the last option, which was 5,000. Question number two, how many medicine measures is 30 ml of cough syrup? So a 6 was 68% of people. Then in question three, it says, what does 25% mass per volume mean? The majority said 25 grams per 100 ml, which is correct. What is 50% of 16? Yes, majority 95% took 8, which is correct. Number 5, a person weighs 7 kg and then they lost 5% of their weight. 89% got 3.5 kgs, which is correct. 20 ml of alcohol was added to 40 ml of water. What is the ratio of alcohol to the total solution? 62 got 1 is to 63 got 1 is to, sorry, it's just updating. 64 got 1 is to 2. We'll check if that was the correct answer because you needed to do some thinking. Then the one about a batch, you have a batch and you have a certain number of labels. from 2000, what percentage needs to be returned? Mo said 1, around 1, which is 47%. We'll look at that one because it needed some thinking as well. And then you had a question on cycle count in terms of expired, short dated, and damaged. Majority said 40. We will look at that one because you also needed to do some application and thinking. And then if you have 15 containers and you have a cost per unit of 130 Rand, majority said 1950, 88%, which is correct. And then what percentage weight per volume will be obtained when 5% of chlorine is added to 500 ml of water? Majority said 1, which is, I think, is correct, but we'll look at it now. So thank you for your responses. I'm just going to share my screen now with basically briefly how we got to each answer. But overall, the results or the feedback looks great. There's just some that might be incorrect for the questions that you had to think. Thank you so much for sharing. I appreciate it. All right, so basically this is just what I wanted to share with you so that you have an idea of how did we get to the solutions. So for number 1, it said convert 5 grams to milligrams. The answer was 5,000, which majority did get. So how did we get there? So you are given 5 grams. We know from that diagram of conversions, 1 gram is 1,000 milligrams. Therefore, how do we convert? We just say 5 times 1,000 and we ended up with 5,000 milligrams. So this is all about conversions, knowing your table, knowing your that conversion diagram that was shown to you. Okay, the second one was how many medicine measurefuls in 30 ml of cough syrup? The answer was 6, which majority got. So this is something you need to know. One medicine measure is 5 mils. It's a standard thing that you need to know. You won't be given this or you won't be told this. So you are given 30 mils. So you need to know by saying 30 divided by 5, and the answer becomes 6 measures. Therefore, the answer was 6, which majority got correct. Then the next one, I'm just going to scroll down. What does 25% mass per volume mean? So when we have mass per volume, mass is always a weight in grams and volume is always a liquid. So volume, it's always per 100 mils. That's something you need to know. You won't be given or told it. So if we look at 25%, we need to have a mass. That means it's 25 grams per 100 mils of liquid. So a majority did get this one correct. Okay, then number 4 says, what is 50% of 16? So if you just think of it off your head, it's like saying half of 16, which is 8, which was the correct answer. Or you can say, what is 50%? 50% means 50 divided by 100, which is 0.5. Then we say 0.5 times 16, and we get 8, which was the correct answer. Number 5, a person weighed 70 kgs at his previous doctor's visit. At his current visit, the patient lost 5% of his weight. How many kgs has the patient lost? So remember, read the question properly. It's not saying how many percentage, it's saying how many kgs. So the answer was 3.5 kgs, which most got. So we had 70 kgs. He lost 5%. What does 5% mean? It's always something over 100. So it's 5 divided by 100, which is 0.05. Then all we do is say 0.05 times 70, which is 3.5 kgs. Okay, then this one I see was a little bit mixed responses. And the reason is you needed to read this question properly. So remember, they told us previously you get basic questions, knowledge, recall, analyzing, evaluating. Here you had to think. So it says if 20 ml of alcohol are added to 40 ml of water. So you have one beaker with 20 ml of alcohol and you are pouring it into another beaker with 40 ml of water. What is the ratio of alcohol to the total solution? So in this case, the key words here is total solution. So most people would have said 20 is to 40 and they got 1 is to 2, but that was incorrect. The total volume is 20 plus 40, which is 60. But they want the ratio of alcohol to the total volume. So it's 20 is to 60, not 20 is to 40, which I see most of the responses said. So how do we simplify it? We divide both sides by 30, and the answer becomes 1 is to 3. So the correct answer was 1 is to 3 for this question. So remember, read the question carefully, analyze, and apply. Number 7, during the packaging of a batch of medicine, 1980 labels are used from 2000 that were originally issued. What percentage? So read the question. It's asking you about percentage. So you know that your answer must be in percentage. Must be returned to the dispensary. The answer was 1 in this case. So this is fairly straightforward. It's 2000 that were issued, 1980 that were used, returned, you minus two, you say 2000 minus 1980, you get 20. But they want the answer in percentage. And here you say 20 divided by the original amount, which is 2000 times 100, and you get 1%, which was the correct answer. Then we come to number 8, which was also a little bit tricky. I saw most of the responses were mixed, but some took the incorrect option. So it says 50 containers of a medicine are counted during a cycle count. Of the 50, 5 are expired, 2 are short dated, and 3 are damaged. Using the information given, how many containers of medicine can still be issued? So here the key is to know what can you use and what can't you use. So 5 are expired. Can we use expired medicine? No, you can no longer use it, so we cannot issue it. 2 are short dated. Yes, we can use this because it's not yet expired. As long as it's not expired, we can still use it. It means it might be closer to expiring, but it's not yet expiring. 3 are damaged. Can we use or give out damaged items? No, we cannot. Therefore, it is 5 plus 3, which will be 8 that you cannot use. So the 5 that were expired and 3 that were damaged. So it will be 50 minus 8, and the answer is 42. So the answer in this case was 42. Some might have chose 40 or included the short dated, but this one you needed to think. Then we come to number 9, which was a fairly simple one, where they told you a total value of 15 containers of a medicine has a cost per unit of 130 Rand. So when they say per unit, what do they mean? They mean one container. So 15 containers you have, and one of them costs 130 Rand. So all you do is say 15 times 130 Rand, and you end up with 1950, and the answer was 1950. All right, then this one also, I see few people did get it correct. But it was also needing a little bit of thinking and application. This was the last question. So what percentage weight per volume solution will be obtained when 5 grams of chlorine is added to 500 ml of water? The answer was 1. So how do we get there? So you are given 5 grams in 500 ml. So we need to know how many grams are there in 100 ml. So we have 5 grams in 500. Find out how many grams are in 100 ml. So we say 5 is to 500. X, we don't know, is to 100. We cross multiply. We then get 500x is equal to 500. How do we get rid of the 500? We divide both sides by 500. So x is equal to 1. So the answer is 1% weight per volume. And that is how we got to 1. Okay, that was it. All right. Yeah, that was it. Thank you so much. I wish you all the best for the calculations, and I would like to hand over to the next speaker. Thank you.
Again, are you ready or can I project for you?
I'm ready. I'm just confirming if we're taking a coffee break now or is it after this section? Sorry, I just want to confirm.
We can take the coffee break. That would be 10 to 15 minutes.
Okay, so let's take a break. And guys, it's just a quick break. So maybe we can reconvene, let's say 8 minutes. Time to go and make a quick cup of coffee. And we'll start again at 10 past. Welcome back, everyone. So it's just gone 10 past, and we're going to get started with the second section. So in the first part, we dealt a lot with the overall look of the examination, and then we delved into the calculation. So now we're going to move to the general questions. Okay, so once again, when I talked to you initially, we talked about the overall examination coming from all 4 exit level outcomes. And when we looked specifically at the calculations, we saw that it came from ELO 1, ELO, so there was ELO 1, 2, and 4, I think. So here, going back to where the questions for the general section are going to come from, here we once again having them come from across the exit level outcomes. Again, majority will come from exit level outcome number 1, which, if you remember, has to do with that knowledge and definition and scientific principles, our scope of practice. Exit level outcome number 2, which dealt with stock management, 3, manufacturing, and 4, compounding. So it's very important that once again, we know that we need to focus on those 2 really large sections, which is ELO 1 and 2, but not forgetting 3 and 4. Okay, so the general questions, those come from everyday scenarios that you would come across in a pharmacy. So it's really testing, do you know the basics and can you apply that information? Being an open book examination, you can have a look at your reference sources. Unlike the calculation section where we said that it's almost a hindrance to use those textbooks and those reference material in the examination, it may be a little bit different here, because when it comes to the general examination, what we find is that we sometimes do need those references in the exam. And maybe our approach here is slightly different. So we would look at the question, analyze the answers, and then we may need to look at maybe a specific area or look up one of the options again, just to confirm. So that's important that we now know what books to use and how to use those books. So you're allowed to use books, you're allowed to use physical books, but we know that majority of the students don't own books. You are also allowed to use PDF copies that you can download and have on your computer, as well as you can print these if you want. There are also some other online references. So for example, EM guidance that you may want to access. So that's very important that you are looking for these resources now and that you're starting to store them and keep them in a way that you know how to access them. It's important, very, very important, that you are going to use references that are applicable to the South African setting. So that means that if you use standard treatment guidelines for the UK or Australia or the US, it doesn't apply within our setting. So it's important that, especially when we're looking at treatment guidelines, or especially when we're looking at products that are available, we're looking at that locally and not internationally. Okay. And secondly, that we must use references that provide up-to-date information. So that's very important. There's so many references out there that you need to be able to discern which references are relevant and will be easiest to use within this examination. Okay, so very important. If we have a look at online PDF references that are provided and ones that you need to access. So let's start at the top. We've got our standard treatment guidelines and essential medicine list, and this is PHC, pediatric and hospital. There's a PDF document that you can download. But once again, I want to here make sure that you understand that it has to be the latest version of this. Okay. And for example, there are websites such as EM Guidance that always uploads the latest standard treatment guidelines or essential medicine list. The good pharmacy practice, so the PDF document, the manual that you can download from the website. Having said that, I want to once again caution you that sometimes there are parts of that GPP that have been updated, and those are then captured on the website in the form of a board notice. So you need to make sure, for example, that you are accessing the latest information. So although we may have PDF consolidated versions of these, I just would like to highlight that it's always important that you know what has been updated. And I'm going to show you where you can access that. The GMP guideline, importantly, the Pharmacy Act. So the Pharmacy Act you'll be able to access through the website, but remember that that is the act. And in order, you may need to consult, for example, the regulations or the guidelines or a board notice, which would not be part of that act. We've also got the Medicines and Related Substances Act, that's 101 of 1965. Once again, please remember though, that that is the act that does not include the general regulations. So I'm trying to hint at possible documents that you need to go and find to make sure that you're building up the downloaded folder of or repository that you are going to use with your reference material. These are ones that are provided to you through the examination sites. So what we suggest is that during the practice exam, there is a little tab that called reference material that you can click on. And during the practice exam, you download all of those documents and you save it to your laptop so that when you access all of that information on the day of the exam, you're already familiar with those documents. Then having a look at what you have got, you've got your EM guidance. And if you haven't yet logged on to EM guidance, you need to do that before the practice exam. EM guidance gives us so much information, but it doesn't tell you what document to use. It's not a AI powered tool that will give you the answer. It's not a search engine. You are going to have to know what information EM guidance provides. So it's really great if you are looking for general information about an API or a specific guideline, a dose, etc. So those are the things that you'd be able to find there. Drug interactions. Essential medicine list guide, which is important. You may want to access the MSD, so the Merck manual. You can get the professional version. Again, I just want to caution that a lot of the guidance that is given in the Merck manual is general guidelines, and that is not specific to the South African context. So although it may help, it may not be relevant, especially when it comes to the clinical information. The most important question that you need to be asking yourself is this current? So by current, we mean, is this information up to date? Is it going to give me information that is valid when you are writing the exam? Okay, so let's move to the next slide. Now, we said that you can have online references that you can download. And one of the sites that you really need to familiarize yourself with is the Pharmacy Council website. And I just don't think that we always know how much information has been saved there. So if you go, and this is the public facing platform, so you don't need to log in. So you wouldn't have to put any number or password to get to this information. It's on the public websites. So when you go to that landing page, you will see these tabs at the top here: about SAPC, registered person, organization, members of the public. Above that, you will see these orange circles. So you need to go to this middle circle that looks like a book. And if you click on that, it gives you all the references and all the material that Pharmacy Council uploads onto the website. So it will provide information of annual reports, not important to you for this exam. It will give you legislation, which should really have red light bulbs going off because that's the most important tab. Pharmacia is important in terms of it highlights the changes that have been made. So for example, Council normally releases it on an annual basis. Take a read through that document, open up all the tabs and see what changes have come about in practice. Remember that we said, go back and have a look at what are changes that have happened, what is happening within my context. You don't have to worry about the last two tabs being rate card and reports. Okay, so if we go further into this legislation tab, if you click on it, what you will see is right at the top, it will talk about Act, regulations, rules, board notices, and proposed legislation. The first one, if you click on it, it gives the Pharmacy Act. Remember that it's important that you are familiar with both the Pharmacy Act and the Medicines and Related Substances Act. We don't have, so the Pharmacy Council website does not contain the Medicines and Related Substances Act. You would need to go to the SAPRA website to access that. So just make sure that you are doing that. In terms of regulations, these are the regulations that you can find. And remember that this relates to regulations relating to training, for examples, registration, practice, etc., etc. These are all documents that if you have to contrast this to what your provider has taught you, you would find a lot of overlap. So this is probably what your provider has used in order to create your learning material. Once again, remember that you need to be familiar with these documents and how to use them. In terms of the rules, if you look at the 1 second from the bottom, this is the rules, the good pharmacy practice guidelines. And remember that this manual that we have is made up of various rules. So one of these days, we are expecting that we're going to get an updated PDF version of the GPP, but you can either open up the original PDF document. Once again, very, very important that you familiarize yourself with the latest information, and there are probably a lot more that you'll find. So we've had updated information about reference material that a pharmacy must keep. We've had updated material, large things that have changed within practice. So you need to make sure that you've gone there and had a look through all of those information. These are all PDF documents that you can open and you can download onto your computer. The next one is board notices. So board notices also is the latest information that is available. Again, this list has probably expanded since it was downloaded. It's important that you open up each one of these and that you are familiar. We will never say to you, what is in board notice 138 of 2020? The question will never be posed like that, but the information within the board notice could be asked. So that's important. The last tab deals with, so I just want to go back here. The last tab deals with proposed legislation. Anything under proposed legislation will not be examined because that is not yet been that is not yet in law. So we can't examine things that are still pending or what the profession is thinking about in the future. So anything under proposed legislation will not be examined. But all of the other information can be examined. So you will see that a lot of the information that you are going to see coming out in your examination is all going to be from this legislation page, not directly. It will never ask you, what does this board notice say? But it will be the application of that information in practice. Now, all of the sites that you have been exposed to, they should have used these guidelines, these regulations, and the Act in order to prepare their SOPs. And therefore, you would see the correlation from the SOPs to the legislation. Okay, so in terms of reference material, so now that we've got the reference material, you need to ask yourself about how you're going to use the reference material. So if you are using books, how am I going to look up the information quickly? Because you don't have a lot of time to spend looking up questions. So it's important that you know where the index is, where's the contents page, as well as what information I can find. Remember, I was talking about EM guidance, and I said, if I got information related to a specific product, clinical information, I would use EM guidance. But if I want to know the storage conditions of a specific product, I would then need to go back to the package insert. So it's important that you know these differences. More references is not always necessarily better. So the more I bring into the exam, sometimes this may confuse me. If you are going to be using reference material or Perhaps a question asks you something that you haven't come across. Rather, don't answer that question and come back to it at the end, where you can perhaps spend a bit more time deciding on what reference source to use. So it's just a hint in terms of don't spend time trying to find a reference that you're not familiar with. Rather, come back to that. They always say that you shouldn't bring something into exam that you haven't used before. And this is very important because you just won't know how to use it. Again, if that does happen in the exam and that you're trying to find information, come back to those questions. Using your notes from the provider that or the university that you may have been trained at is not always it's not always helpful. You need to make sure that you know what information is in there and where there have been updates. It's not that we're saying that those notes are incorrect. What we're saying is that there may have been developments since those notes were developed, and therefore the information may be old. Okay. Online resources. Remember that we often struggle with bandwidth, etc., during the exam. So we say rather download information beforehand. So whatever PDF document you can download before the exam and familiarize yourself with, you should do so. It's very time consuming to search during a exam, even online, so come back to it. You won't be able to Google search an answer or have a look at an AI bot and ask it to generate the answer. Your exam is remotely, especially if you're in a remote venue, your exam is going to be invigilated remotely, and we will have a record of every page that you clicked on. So you aren't allowed to Google answers. Okay. Remember, we said two very, very important pages. We've shown you the South African Pharmacy Council website and where to find legislation. And we need you to go to the SAPA website and have a look what information you can download and access from that. Remember that specifically spend time on information that is going to be relevant to your scope of practice. So even in the questions that were presented earlier for calculations, reading the question is so important. And when we read the question, we need to make sure that we take time to understand it. Once we've read the question, often we get confused when we read the options. So if it is something that you already know the question to, so almost block out the answers and think, what would be the right answer in this situation? And see if that option comes up. If you're going through the options one by one, take time to identify the statements which you are sure of. Then confirm using the reference statements that you are unsure of. If you don't know the answer, carry on. But you can't answer the question and then carry on. You need to leave the question blank so that you can come back to the question at the end. Okay, so that's important. Don't guess at that point. Take time to come back at the end of the exam and go through that question. It's important that you have a look at specific words that we are using within questions. So we spend a lot of time constructing questions and trying to ensure that the questions don't cause confusion. But words that we often use are words such as true, is, or correct. So you looking within that question for the correct answer. What is right within this question? Which of the options, A, B, C, and D, are correct? If we use the word except, false, not, incorrect, we're asking you to identify out of the four options that are there, which is the incorrect, which is the wrong statement, which one doesn't fit with the others. Okay, so in the first situation, you're telling me what is right. Here you're finding out which one is standing out because it is wrong. What is sometimes tricky are the words most appropriate. And if we look at the words most appropriate, it means that perhaps some of the other options could kind of be right, but you're looking for the most correct. So which one stands out as the ultimate correct answer? So sometimes those questions may be a little bit trickier. So just be aware of that. Most appropriate, I need to go for the answer that is most accurate so that it is most correct. Okay. Okay, in terms of your time, so this is slightly different. That if we have a look, you've got approximately 168 minutes for the general questions. You've got 84 multiple choice questions, which means that you've got 2 minutes per question. Compared to the calculation section, this is less. So here you need to go and work a little bit faster than the way that you worked in the previous section. So it's just important that you are conscious of this time. Some questions may take you less time, but there's a possibility that some questions are a little bit more difficult. Maybe you're evaluating it a bit more, and they may take a little bit longer. So it's important that you're conscious of time. Make sure that you're wearing a watch or that you've got the time. I think there is a timer on the examination platform, and that you're aware of the time so that you can work through at an adequate pace. Remember, again, big exclamation marks, lights flashing, etc. There is no negative marking, which means that you should not leave anything blank. Take the most educated guess that you can to that question. Okay, so there's no risk associated with choosing an answer that you think would be the most correct. So don't be hesitant not to answer all the questions. Okay, so in the same way that we went through questions earlier for the calculations, we're also going to go through a few examples from the general section. So I'm going to give you here, because remember we need to work a little bit faster, I'm going to give you about 6 minutes to complete these questions. So I would like you to try and work a little bit faster with these questions. And we're going to start at about 10:37, 10:38, round about there, and go through these answers. While you're going through these answers, please take some time just to think about what reference source would you use. So that's important. Not only what the answer is, but at the back of your mind, just keep on thinking about what reference source could I use. So take some time to do these, and we're going to reconvene at 10:38. Okay, everyone. I see we've only got 47 responses, so I'm going to give you another minute, and then we're going to start going through the answers. Okay, we're definitely getting there. I see the numbers going up. So if you haven't yet submitted, please do so. If you have submitted, remember just to take a minute or two just to think about the questions and try to match the reference that you're going to use. So what kind of reference would you use to find the answer to that question if you didn't know the question straight away? Sorry, the answer straight away. Okay, so let's take a look at the answers. So if we have a look, so right at the beginning, Let's have a look at the average time that it took people. So 10 questions, 4 minutes and 52 seconds. I know that is really quite quick. And if we think about that, remember that we said that you need to be conscious of the time. So it took on average less than 30 seconds per multiple choice question to answer these. So I don't want you to be too fearful of the time, because from here you can actually see that it is possible. Okay, so let's have a look at the first question. What is the most correct term to use for stock that is at the end of its product cycle and has not seen any sales or usage for a set period of time? Okay, so if we have a look, unusable stock, which is rather a vague term, and it could actually apply to more than one of the others listed below, damaged stock, expired stock, and obsolete stock. So definitely the majority got it correct, 54. And if you have a look, there were either the confusion came with expired stock and obsolete stock. Now remember that expired stock is something that it's gone past its date of expiry. So we would have had to have mentioned that within the question. It didn't say that it was past its expiration date within the question. Obsolete stock would be unsold, unused, outdated stock. If you think about this question, now if we go back, we said we've got 3 types of questions that ask you to do something. We had knowledge, application, and evaluation. And if we think about this, this is a pure definition. So it's relying on your knowledge of stock management. So this is a typical example of a knowledge question. And this kind of an answer may have come from your notes. And those notes probably would have been found on material relating to exit level outcome number 2, or even perhaps number 1. Okay, let's move to the next question. Which of the following sectors is the first point of entry for patients seeking healthcare services in the public sector? So importantly, if you have a look at this, it does mention public sector. So you have to understand the different health sectors. So we've got the public and private healthcare sectors, and then we've got different health establishments within those sectors. So in the public sector, the way that we should access services is that we should start with primary healthcare, and then from there move, for example, they may send you to a community care center, and then there they may send you to a district hospital. So there are different levels of care, and you would need to start. So the entry points would be primary healthcare. So you're either going to go to a PHC or a CHC, but these are primary healthcare facilities. Okay. And again, 84% of you got it correct. This, once again, is a knowledge question. There was a little bit of confusion about a hospital. There are instances where you can, in an emergency situation, access services directly from a hospital. But the right point of care would be to go primary health care and then into a hospital. Which of the following medicines can a pharmacist assistant basic assist in the manufacturing of? So this is important that we're looking at a specific task, manufacturing. So again, if we go back to those exit level outcomes, we are looking at number 3. And remember, specifically, I drew your attention to the word non-sterile when we were talking about this. So this is not straightforward. The question doesn't say which of the following are an example of a non-sterile product. It says which of the following can you, as a pharmacist assistant, so you need to know something about your scope and relate it to manufacturing. And you need to know for each one of these, which one is a non-sterile product. Now, eye drops, subcutaneous injections, and TPN, total parenteral nutrition, those all involve sterility. The only one that doesn't is a suppository. So you would be able to assist in the manufacturing of a suppository. So once again, that is correct. If we compare this question to what we did above, we now see that this is not a straightforward definition. You needed to know more. You needed to know something about scope, and you needed to know something about what was sterile and non-sterile. So this is going to be a higher order thinking level. We're really asking you to apply the information. Okay, question number 4. Which of the following tasks can a pharmacist assistant basic do in a community pharmacy? Options: capture stock onto the inventory system, update the Schedule 6 register, counsel a patient on how to take their medicines, and number 4, perform a blood glucose screening test. This goes back to your scope of practice. So what can you do in this setting? You need to know specifically about your scope of practice. So we're looking at exit level outcome number 1, which dealt with legislation. We aren't asking you this information directly from the way that it's written in legislation. So the practice regulations, we're using different words here. So we're talking more to an action that you would do, an action that you are doing in practice. So it's important that you have a look at this question. It's not straightforward knowledge. This would most likely be an application question. A lot of your tasks in practice revolve around inventory. So 95 of you are correct. I'm so glad to see that no one chose a Schedule 6 register, because we know that handling of Schedule 6 items is not part of the scope of practice of a pharmacist assistant basic. Your interaction with patients is very, very limited. It's minuscule as a basic pharmacist assistant. So you would not be able to counsel a patient on how to take their medication correctly. Remember that counseling on patients on medication that they are taking forms part of phase 3 of dispensing, and that only a post-basic pharmacist assistant would be able to assist with. Any screening test cannot be performed by a basic pharmacist assistant. So therefore, the last one is ruled out. So I'm glad to see that 83% of the group got it correct. And I hope that I've explained why the other answers wouldn't be correct. Go back and have a look at the scope of practice. So now if we think about what reference source you need to know, you would need to know your practice regulations. Moving on to question number 5. Question number 5 says, what is a tablet that must first be dissolved in water before swallowing, known as? Okay. And if we think about what we're asking you to do here, we're asking you to define something or to work out the term. We've given you the definition, and we ask you which of the following terms applies. So you would need to know something about a tablet, and remember that a tablet is a compressed dosage form, and we've got various types of tablets. Tablets, remember, are non-sterile dosage forms. So if we have a look, a butyl tablet, so this is normally one that we put under the tongue to dissolve. It's definitely not one of those because it's not dissolving in water, it dissolves in the mouth. Modified release, these are normally tablets that have a special release profile. So they're normally coated so that they release at a specific part of the intestine. Sorry, sublingual are the ones that go under the tongue. Sorry, a buccal tablet is one that you would swallow. So you would swallow the tablet. Sublingual is one that you would put under the tongue to dissolve. And then the last one, 99% got it correct in terms of this is an effervescent tablet. Remember, an effervescent tablet is one that is not tightly compressed. So when you add it to a glass of water, it does dissolve, and therefore it goes into a suspension that you would then drink straight away. And it has lots of reasons that we do that, for a faster onset of action, for example. And you could probably think of examples of effervescent tablets that you've seen in practice. Some of the cold and flu products are available as an effervescent, and some of even within the vitamin aisle. Those are also examples of effervescent tablets. So effervescent tablets are those that would dissolve in water, and therefore when you're consuming it, you're actually drinking it in the form of a suspension. Okay, so again, that is a definition. Number 6, where is the site of administration for a dosage form that uses transdermal delivery? So transdermal delivery, these are the types of terms that you're going to come across in ELO 1. And we would deliver, this is delivery, the site of administration, where it's been administered through is the skin. So for example, here, you may be putting a patch or you may be rubbing on a cream. It's transdermal delivery. So it's not the eyes, it's not the lungs, it's not under the tongue. Remember that here, these words are quite important that you familiarize yourself with them. Remember that pharmacy is almost a language on its own, and it's important that you're starting to make lists of words that you need to remember. And with those words, also start to think about acronyms that are important to remember, such as things like SOP. Okay, moving to number 7. Now, number 7 is a little bit more complicated. And if look, we can see that it is a more complex question because we've got a range of answers here. And on purpose, I did change the dates within this question because I want you to know that you need to read the question very carefully and use the information within the stem of the question. Okay. So I want you to remember that we've got a couple of dates that are really important here. If stock is received on the 3rd of July with an expiration date on the 30th of December 2025, new stock, and there is already stock on the shelf. If stock with an expiration date of the 30th of Jan, which is current, using FIFO, how would the stock be how should the stock be packed on the shelf? So this deals with when we have a look, are we following first in, first out, or are you following first expired, first out? So already we know that it has given us an expiration date. So within the context of the dates that they have given us, we would put the stock with the first that is first to expire in the front and stock that is going to expire at a later date behind that. So if the new stock is going to expire first, we would put that in the front. If the old stock is going to be expiring first, we would put the new stock at the back. So the current stock is packed behind the new stock. Yes. The new stock is packed behind the current stock. Okay. The new stock is packed next to the current stocks. Are we going to pack them next to one another and separate out batches? That's not normal. Or are we going to send the new stock back to the supplier? Now, when you write your examination, these dates will be within the examination dates. So it will be current dates to when you write the exam. So I want you to first start with that you don't have to worry. You can set aside that. But in this case, it's important that you understand the logic of the question. We would need to have the stock expiring first at the front of the shelf and the stock expiring later at the back of the shelf. So that's important. Remember that this is a principle. The principle is FIFO, first expired, first out. You need to know that acronym and be able to apply it. In this situation, question number 7, it would be very, very difficult for you to use a reference to work out this answer. But these are things that we hope that you have come across again and again in practice and would be very easy for you to tackle now. Which of the following statements would you apply to a tablet that is packed in an amber bottle? So once again, this is very much about the knowledge that you have. You would need to start with asking yourself, what is an amber bottle? And an amber bottle is normally those brown glass bottles that you see in the pharmacies. And this is important because we normally use this for a specific reason. 78% of the class got it correct. It said that the tablet is sensitive to light. Okay, so that's important. So an amber bottle wouldn't affect the temperature. It wouldn't affect the humidity. We would have needed a desiccant for that. And it wouldn't affect oxidation. So it is light. The color of the bottle is helping to preserve those tablets that are light sensitive. So 78% of the class got this correct, or the group got this correct. You would need to know each one of these. And while you're doing this, at the back of your mind, please start to think about how would you protect a product against the temperature? How would you protect a product against humidity? So if we had to ask the same question, changing the stem, you would then be able to see how these questions can also help you to prepare for the exam. The next question looks at those computer programs, and this was in the last ELO that we discussed, which was ELO number 4. And it said, which computer program is most suitable for report writing? Remember that we talked about this word most to say that you can use the others, but which is the easiest program to write a report? So if you're typing up a report, are you going to use PowerPoint? Well, no, because it doesn't have the right setups. I can use PowerPoint, but it's not the most appropriate. I can write a document in Excel, but it's not the easiest way to prepare that information. I'd have to know how to align the documents in those programs, and it's going to take me much longer. So the one that is correct here, where 82% of you got this correct, is Word. Okay, so PowerPoint, Excel, Teams are all incorrect, and Word is the most suitable for report writing. And this, again, is just an example of where we have used the word most. Okay, the last question. Which reference source can be consulted if a pharmacist assistant basic is unsure of what the specified, and this word specified here, I'm really emphasizing it, the specified cleaning product is to be used when cleaning equipment in a community pharmacy. So it's saying if you are cleaning something in a community pharmacy and you've got a few products in front of you, cleaning products, which one is the most appropriate to use? So here we've got a bit of a distribution. We have some saying the Good Pharmacy Practice Manual and some saying the Standard Operating Procedure. And those that answered SOP are correct. Remember that the SOP is based on the Good Pharmacy Practice Manual. The Good Pharmacy Practice Manual is going to tell you everything in a pharmacy must be cleaned. Counting equipment or the desktops need to be wiped down. It's not going to tell you what product needs to be used to wipe that down. Okay, so that's important. It's not going to tell you what to use. The standard operating procedure is going to be very specific. It should tell you exactly how to do that process, what product to use in the pharmacy to complete that task. The GPP is just going to tell you that things have got to be clean, but not how to clean them. So it's important that you know the difference. GMP, again, is a guideline document. It doesn't give us the nitty-gritty information. And then the last one, a pharmacology textbook, is not going to be able to give us that information either. Pharmacology textbooks are really going to tell us about the dose or a specific API, how it should be administered, where it should be administered, the dose, the side effects, contraindications. So a pharmacology textbook is going to give us no information about the cleaning, the actual process to follow. So it's important that you have a look at these options and that you choose the most correct one. So again, that would be the standard option number 3, the SOP. Okay, so there are just a few things that I wanted to highlight before handing over to the office. The one thing that I just want to emphasize is that when these questions are phrased, they're going to be referring to your scope of practice as a pharmacist assistant basic. So that's important to reflect on. And I want you to go through and make sure that you understand your scope of practice inside out. and that you reflect on the current scope of practice of a pharmacist assistant and not what the old scope of practice referred to. So that's very important. Those of you that are in practice and that are qualified pharmacist assistants, please make sure that you can differentiate between sometimes what you do in practice and perhaps shouldn't do, and what the scope allows you to do. So that is critically important, that you need to act within your scope of practice each and every day at work. But when you are approaching these questions, to understand how they are phrased and to work within and to look at it with the eyes of a post of a basic pharmacist assistant. When looking at these questions, look out for the context of the question. Is it asking for wholesale, community, manufacturing? Where's it placing you? Because that's really, really important as well. Okay, so those are just a few tips that I want to ensure that you know. Remember your reference materials, familiarize yourself with the reference materials, really make use of the practice examination to guide you in preparing for the exam. So I think with that, I'm going to hand over to Ms. Machano, and she'll take you through the rest of the presentation.
Thank you, Dr. Johnston. I have a question here. If you can go back to question 4, I'm not sure if the person maybe lost connection, but they were asking for the answer for question 4.
Yeah. Okay, so let's just go through that. Question number 4, a task that a basic pharmacist assistant can do in a community pharmacy is the first one, which is capture stock on the inventory system. You are not allowed to work with the Schedule 6 register. You would not be able to counsel a patient, and you would not be able to perform a blood glucose screening test. So those last 3 you wouldn't be able to do as a basic pharmacist assistant. But if you progress on to post-basic, that of course would open up your scope. So it's important. And remember that a lot of the tasks in a community and hospital pharmacy do relate to stock management. And that's that exit level outcome number 2 that we said counts quite a large proportion of the examination.
Thank you, Dr. Johnston. Yeah, I'll just take over from you now. If you can please confirm that the slides are now visible for the remote online examination. Team. I hope everyone can hear me. I'm now going to start with the remote online examination. We have just below an hour. I will try to go through the slides as quick as I can, but if you're not sure or you have questions, we will take the questions after this workshop, but you can also send emails then to the email address which I will share before the end of this session. Okay, so in terms of the examination or the EISA, we need to remember that there is a criteria for people to write the examination. So we have 3 categories. If you're registered as a pharmacy assistant learner basic under the occupational certificate, so you must have completed a minimum of 6 months of training with an accredited provider, and you should have successfully completed the knowledge, practical, and work experience module, received a statement of results from the provider, completed the practice EISA, and booked online for the actual EISA. So for you to be able to write the practice EISA, which is now the first one is scheduled for the 10th of February, you can book and write the exam even though you haven't completed all the requirements. But to qualify for the actual EISA, you need to have you need to comply with all that is mentioned here. And in terms of those that are registered and qualified pharmacy assistant basic, and they intending to enroll as pharmacy assistant learner post-basic under the new occupational certificate qualification. You need to be active on the register as a qualified pharmacy assistant basic. You should have completed the practice EISA and also booked online and paid the applicable fee for the EISA. And for those that considered pharmacy students who are considered, sorry, former pharmacy student, um, and completed first year of study and intending to register as a pharmacy assistant basic, the requirement is that you should be registered as a learner basic former BPharm student, completed 400 hours in an approved pharmacy and under the direct personal supervision of a pharmacist, submitted at least one progress report, completed the practice EISA and booked online for the EISA and paid the applicable fee. So in terms of the booking, and this is very important, you don't send an email for us to make a booking on your behalf. Once the communication has been shared with everyone, you will need to log in on the SABC website with your credential to be able to make a booking. So once you have landed on the SABC website, logged in with your credential, you will land on this page as depicted, and you will go to examination, EISA examination, and then click on the examination booking tab. So once you click on the tab, this is the information that you will see. So if you do not meet the minimum criteria to write the EISA, you will see no examination listed as depicted above. But if you do qualify to write, then you will see the fee, and you should be able to select the venue that you intend to write at. I will go through the different venue option, but when you select a venue, you need to select one for both the calculation and general section, because the both sections are written on the same day, so you can have different venues for the two. So once you have selected the venue, this is the information you'll see, the date when the examination will be written, as well as the venue, and then you need to make payment of the examination fee. What you see now is the old fee. If you can go to the website now, you will be able to access the most recent fees that is applicable. And there are three options for payment. So if you have a credit on your account, you can make use of that, but you can also use your card to make a payment, or you can use the seed option to make a payment as well. And once you have submitted your booking, you will see it as pending until the case has been finalized on our site, and you will have access then to the booking confirmation. So as I said, if the payment is successful, the record will appear as pending. Once payment is verified by the office, a case will be created, and the candidate then will be added to the exam. If the payment is declined, an SMS will be sent informing the candidate of such, then you'll have to make a new booking with a payment that applies. And preparing for the examination, it's important. So you can study, make sure you have all the relevant references for the exam, but you also need to make sure that your profile on the SAPC website is updated. So you need to make sure that the cell phone number and the email address on the system is current and you have access to it. You also need to make sure that you have a profile picture, and all the communication from the office to all candidates is done through email and SMS. So if your details are not current, then you might miss important information from the office. Okay. So what you see in front of you is also available on the website. These are the dates for the planned EISA for the year 2026. So firstly is the practice EISA, which is scheduled for the 10th of Feb. So if you want to write on the 10th, that will be next Tuesday, you can still make a booking until tomorrow. There's also another date, which is the 26th of May, followed by the 11th of August. So these are the only three scheduled for the year. As I said, one of the criteria is that you write a practice EISA before you are able to write the main EISA. So these are the dates available. If you intend to write an EISA later in the year, you can look at when is the practice EISA scheduled as well. And then the second table then just depicts the dates for the main EISA as well. Examination fee, as I said, has been updated, is 737. If you do not book when the bookings open, you can still make a booking, and that is considered a late booking, but then the fee goes up a bit. So the actual fee is 737, but if you book late, then you will be liable for a fee that is a bit more, that is 1,104 rands. Okay, so where do you find the manual and the practice papers? I will take you through the website before the end of the session, but you go to the registered persons, that's sapc.za.org. Under registered persons, you will go to, I think it's the student trainee, then you should be able to access this page. And under assessment, that's where the practice paper, the manual, and the blueprint are saved. So the venues that are the venue options available to all the candidates is writing at your place of residence. You can also write at your workplace. If you opt to write at our offices, you can do so, and then you can also opt for other. What's important for the remote examination, it should be treated like any other examination. Even though it's online, you still need to abide by all the rules that apply to any other examination. So you need to find a quiet, suitable workplace where you'll write the examination, and there should be enough space for the devices and the reference. During the examination, you need to obviously keep calm, communicate with your remote invigilator if you are experiencing any difficulty, but there's also other options to communicate. We do have a WhatsApp that you can make use of if you're experiencing challenges with your examination. You need to make sure that you download all the electronic references before the examination, because you cannot be accessing Google except if you are trying to access, let's say, SAPRA website, but you can't use Google to assist during the examination. You need to ensure that you have equipment needed for the examination, such as your calculator, paper, and for working out your calculations. You cannot use your cell phone during the examination. So just make sure that you do have your calculator in hand before that. In terms of the device and connectivity for the candidate, it is very important to make sure that your device has a camera. So even if you have a laptop, if it doesn't have a camera or not linked to a camera with video capabilities, you will not be able to access the examination. You need to make sure that you have connectivity, and your device must have Google Chrome, Firefox, or Microsoft Edge. These are the only browsers that you can make use of for the examination, not any other. So for those that are using Apple products, make sure that you download any of the 3 browsers beforehand, because you will not be able to access the exam on any other browser. So you need to have your device, which is a laptop, plus a cell phone. Okay. As I said, you need to make sure that you update your profile picture. The image uploaded on the website must be a color image, and it must be taken in the last 6 months, and it must be of your head and shoulders. We don't need a full body picture. Please note that the profile picture is used by the invigilator to verify identity of the candidate writing the exam. So when you start with your examination, the invigilator will look at your profile picture against the picture that appears during the examination to make sure that it is the same person. So this is just an example of the profile picture that we will see as the office is uploaded on the website. And in terms of accessing the examination itself on the day of the exam, where would you access the examination? You go under registered persons and then click the learner, student, and trainee tab. And once you have that access, you click on assessment, and then the information for the current examination will be displayed. We do share this information a day before the examination as well, so that you know where to access the examination for the day. So on the day of the examination, the exam starts at 9 o'clock, but you need to make sure that you're logged in from 8 o'clock. So you log in on the SAPC website and enter the one-time PIN, which will be sent to the cell phone number that is registered on our website. So it's important to make sure that your cell phone number is current. Then once you have received the one-time PIN, you will be taken to a page to complete the declaration and to read the examination rules. So when we reach 9 o'clock, the examination will start. You also meet your remote invigilator through our live invigilation proctoring system. So images taken to verify the learner against the profile will be done during that time. We'll also be taking periodic images throughout the examination. So as explained, the examination is 3.5 hours. So you start at 9 and then end at 12:30. So this is how the examination platform looks like. So when you start logging in at 8 o'clock, you'll have to use the link that we will share, or you can access the examination through the process I've mentioned, that you go under assessment and then you will click on the date of that specific examination. You will enter your P number, ID number, and password. And it is very important because I've been receiving quite a few emails where people cannot access their profiles on SAPC website because of how they capture the P number. So they either capture the 5-digit number without the P, or they enter P, then the space. So it's important to know how to capture your username. It's P and the 5-digit number. Nothing else should be included as part of that username. Also your ID number or passport, as well as your password. Once you've entered your details, you receive then the OTP, which is valid for 10 minutes. So you need to make sure then that you enter that number within 10 minutes, or you'll have to start the process again. Once you have entered the one-time PIN, you will be taken now to the proctoring system, which will look at your picture, the access to video ability and everything else, which I will explain now. And if this is based on the device itself. So if the device checks out, then you will be taken to the declaration page. Okay, so if all is good, you will be able to now access the examination. I think the facilitators did explain you have one question with 4 possible answers. So you choose the answer that is most applicable according to you. If you're not sure, do not answer. You can move on to the next question, but you cannot answer, then have access to those questions again. So any answered question will not longer be available for you to revisit. So if you're not sure, move on to the next question, then you can look at the question again later on. And once the examination is completed, you will be taken then to the survey, and then the examination will close. If you're not done writing within the 3.5 hours, the examination will still close. So you cannot say, I didn't finish it. You still need more time. Everyone is afforded the same time, which is 3.5 hours. Whether you're finished or you're not finished, the examination will close. However, even if you don't submit on your own, the examination closes while you're trying to write. All the answers will be saved automatically. So you will not lose any of the work that you've already submitted. So in terms of the steps to logging in and accessing the examination platform on the SAPC website, I did say we will share the link, so you can either access the examination using the link provided, or going to the tab registered person, learner, student or trainee, then under assessment, then you will also be able to access the exam. As I said, you need to have your P number, ID number or passport, as well as your password. You will receive the OTP, which is valid for 10 minutes. And then the checks, and this is what is important, to make sure that your device is ready for you to write the exam. What happens is that once you logged in, now the process starts of checking that the device complies with what is displayed here. So there will be a browser check to check that you're using the correct browser, that your webcam is working and it is on. The microphone is also accessible. The network is also available. There will be a screen check. So during the examination, we need to see everything that you're seeing as a candidate. So if you logged in on your computer, the invigilator that's invigilating the exam should be able to see what you're seeing. So the screen and additional screen will also be checked that is available. So you can see one thing and the invigilator sees another thing. What we have here, and we will also share with everyone, is the link for you to check that your device is compatible before the actual examination. So you need to test at least a day before the exam that your device is compatible. You cannot check on the day of the examination. So if your equipment check is successful, everything will be changed to green. However, if you're seeing red, it means any of the checks is not going through. So you need to make sure that if it says the browser check, it means you're using any incorrect browser. If it says the webcam is red, it might be that you did not give rights to the browser that you're using. You need to make sure you go to your webcam and give access for the browser. So everything should be green for you to move to the next step. If any of these checks turns red, it means you will not be able to continue to the next step. Okay, so this part you don't need to fill in, you just press next, and then that's where the verification comes in. So there will be a verification of your face photo against the picture that is saved on our system. Okay, once everything is done, now you will need to scan the QR code, which will appear on your device using your phone. So you have to make sure that your smartphone has the capability for QR scanning. But if it doesn't, you can also download that beforehand. So you must use a smartphone to scan the QR code to connect the phone to the examination platform for a better view of your workspace and examination room. Then you click play button to record a short video of your room and surroundings. So once that is done, you will complete the examination declaration for you to be able to access the exam. So in terms of the declaration, is before the examination, you obviously making sure or agreeing that you're writing the examination in a suitable area with minimal anticipated distraction. You're not sitting next to or in close proximity to any other candidate completing the examination. But this is different for those that are writing at the offices, because you will be sitting next to someone, but there will be an invigilator in the room. You'll not receive any form of assistance from any person who are writing the examination. You will not communicate verbal, electronic, or in person with any registered person during the examination. You'll not use the reference material. You'll only use the reference material permitted in the examination. I think this has been mentioned before. You cannot go to Google and ask question. And there was another question on the chat, if you can use ChatGPT. That is not allowed. You'll not access any other reference material that has been prohibited, including websites. You'll not give any assistance to any other person completing the examination, and you will not share or retain the contents of the examination via electronic, printed, written, or verbal means with any other person. And you will inform the SAPC if you are aware of any candidate that contravenes the examination code of conduct. Okay. Then you will have now access to the examination instruction, and once we get to 9 o'clock, then you will have access to start the examination itself. Once you're done writing the examination, you will be expected to complete the post-examination survey. At the end of the examination, then you just to confirm that you completed the examination without any assistance from any other person, and that you understand that if it is found that you have contravened the examination code of conduct, SAPC will implement disciplinary action. And this is important to note because it has been done before. So if at any point your invigilator did let you know that you're using your cell phone and you're not allowed, and you continue doing so, then you will have to go through the disciplinary action. Important messages to take note of. So if at any point while you're trying to log in, you get this information that you must adjust your date and time, you must do so. So in terms of us or writing the exam, your time zone should be the same as the SAPC time zone, which is I think it's Harare, Pretoria. You have to make sure that it's so. Even if you're writing the examination and you are in another country, you have to set the time zone to match that of SAPC, because if it's not aligned, then you will not be able to continue. Also, there's warning that the left proctoring is not connected, so you have to make sure that you are connected with your cell phone. If not, then you will be kicked out of the examination until you do so. And also, if you attempt to start the examination before 9 o'clock, then you will get this message. The examination format, it is one question per page. You cannot select which question you want to start with because all the questions are randomized. So even if you're sitting next to someone, their number one will not be your number one. So all the questions are randomized for candidates. And this is a timed examination. It is 3.5 hours. And that doesn't change. You cannot revisit any question that has been answered. You only have access to an answered question, and there's only single best answer for every question. It's a multiple question with 4 possible options. There's no negative marking, so you have to always read the question before you attempt to answer. So this is very important, violations during the examination. So any action undertaken by the candidate to gain unfair academic advantage will be considered a violation. This may include, but not limited to, cheating, copying, as well as possession of unauthorized material. So if that happens, you try to Google an answer, your invigilator will warn you for you not to do that. But if you continue, you might be kicked out of the examination, and also SAPC can implement disciplinary action against you. So these are just the other examples. There's a conversation or background noise. So your invigilator will tell you if there's background noise, or they notice that you're talking to someone, they will warn you. Or focus switch to a different window. So if you're changing, that will be also a violation. If your phone is disconnected, that option where you scan your QR code, if that is disconnected, then you also receive a warning. And if you're not making use of the second, or you're not giving access for the invigilator to see your second screen, and if you mute your microphone, that will also be a violation. So we have prepared the frequently asked question based on the previous examination, so to help you on what to do during the examination. So as I said, there will be a chat function on the actual examination platform. So if you have any question, you can make use of that, and the invigilator will do the same to respond using the platform. You may use the WhatsApp option also to send a message to the invigilator on WhatsApp. And at most, or it's just a minimum number of people writing any exam is 400. So sometimes when you send a message now, you're not going to receive the response in the next minute, because there might be other people asking questions. So you just have to keep calm and wait for the invigilator to respond to your message. And what if the invigilator needs to contact you? Keep your cell phone next to you. Obviously, you cannot use your cell phone during the examination, but it must be next to you for the invigilator to get hold of you. Make sure that it's fully charged and that you have data. the invigilator may call or send a message on the cell phone number you have provided to SAPC. So we will not have any other number but the one that you have saved on the website, on the SAPC website. So make sure that you update if your number has changed. So what to do if you experience load shedding or loss of electricity during the examination? Again, you must try and keep calm. So you must check your load shedding schedule before time. But if it happens and you were not expecting it, you must make alternate arrangement. Inform your invigilator before you do anything. You must make sure that your laptop is fully charged before the examination, that it can give you time to change or continue writing until you have your electricity back. Ensure that you have alternative Wi-Fi connection if you're not using a fiber connection. If you're unable to find an alternative Wi-Fi connection or need to be connected to a power supply, please find an alternative location. Notify the invigilator via WhatsApp of any changes. And if load shedding occurs during the examination, your work will still be saved. So what happens to the questions you have answered if you lose connection? Again, you must always keep calm. The questions that you have answered are automatically changed, so you will not lose any of that. When you log in again, you will only have access to the questions that you have not answered. The questions will be randomized and they may be renumbered once you log back in. You just continue to answer the questions as they appear. So what should I do if my invigilator notifies me that they cannot see my cell phone view during the examination? You must scan the QR code again to ensure that the smartphone then is connected to the exam platform. What should I do if I need to change exam venue? All changes to the booking venue must be communicated via email. I will share the email address. So if you have booked to write at home, but now you can see that your device is not compatible, you can change to SAPC, but you have to do that in writing on email, and then you will get a response obviously confirming that the change has been effected. What should I do if disconnected and on login, there's a pop-up, this page was reopened elsewhere? You need to close all the browsers, refresh, and most of the time delete the browsing history for the last 24 hours, and then you should be able to log in again. And where you sit, it is very important. So there are images taken of all candidates throughout the examination. So if you are writing in your bedroom, there's people moving in the bedroom, make sure that you then move to another room because that will be captured as part of the images that SAPC takes randomly. Ensure that there's sufficient lighting. For example, close the curtains and blinds if sitting in front of a window. Test the lighting beforehand. Take a selfie of yourself to test that. Ensure that your camera is on. Dress appropriately. So this is an exam, just like any other exam venue where you dress appropriately. You need to do the same. Please do not have your chest out while you're writing the exam. If the invigilator cannot see the images taken, they will phone you on your cell phone to inform you of such. When will you receive the results? This is very important. So for and can you view your exam paper or can the examination be remarked? So the examination results will be released once the results have been analyzed and verified. And this is for EISA. So for practice EISA, we have about 2 days to release the results. But in terms of the actual EISA, there is a process which involves a number of people. So it takes 8 weeks for the results to be published. So if you wrote today, we count 8 weeks from the day when the exam is written. So that is important to note. You may apply to review your examination, but that is done through a formal process where you complete an application form and there is a fee applicable for that. You'll be allowed to view the examination questions against the answers you provided. The correct answer will also be indicated for you to see. You may ask the facilitator for the reference that was used for that answer or the steps to the calculation. You are permitted to make notes. However, you may not make copies or take photos of that examination. You may not apply for a remark. So SAPC goes through a process to make sure that the answer that is considered the correct one is the correct one. So there is meetings that happens before and after the examination. So we do not do any remarking. So the results that have been checked and verified before release will stay. Okay, so I think I just went too fast. I'm open to taking questions, but if there are no questions, then I will just take you through the website and the look and feel of the website and what information you can access on the website. Comms team, any questions, or should I go straight to the website?
We do have some questions.
Okay.
Where do we send the statement of results and completed knowledge, practicals, and work experience modules?
Okay, so that is not the responsibility of the candidate. It is done between the provider and SAPC. So once there's any changes, the information will be uploaded on the website by the provider. So it's not the responsibility of the candidate.
When do you pay the final EISA after the practice?
Okay. So you can pay the fee at any time, but before you do the booking. So if you going to make a payment by EFT, it's advisable that you pay it in advance so that by the time you book, the amount is already in your profile. But if you're using your credit card, then you can pay at the time of the booking.
Oh, I need a phone and a laptop. What if I do not have a laptop? Can I only use my phone? And what if I do not have a phone? Can I only use my PC?
You know, you need to have a working computer that passes all the checks, as well as your cell phone with a QR code scanning capability. If you do not have any of those, you're more than welcome to write at the SAPC offices.
Are we allowed to scribble on a blank page, like making calculations?
Yes. So the same rules that would apply to any other examination. You can scribble, you can make your own notes. It's an open book examination, so that is allowed.
Where are we going to write this exam?
Okay, so there's 4 possible venue or options. So you can write at the SAPC offices. You can write at your place of residence if you have all the equipment that's required. You can write at your workplace. The same applies. All the equipment should be available. And what's important with the workplace, because other employers have firewalls, make sure that the firewalls will not block the examination well before the exam. So if there are firewalls, the best places, the work place of residence or the SAPC offices, but you also can write at other venues such as the library if there is access to the computer as well as the internet.
Are we not allowed to use cell phones to answer questions?
No, you're not allowed. So you can make use of the references mentioned by the facilitators, but you can't use your phone.
Regarding
Okay.
dress code, for the ones that are writing at head office, I'm assuming they meant the SAPC offices, can they wear casual?
Yes. Just need to be presentable. That's it. It's not, there's no formal kind of way that's expected from the candidates.
Is it possible to use your own notes and search word to word while on the exam?
Sorry, I think I missed that. There's using own notes, but to search.
Word to word while on the exam.
So you can use your make use of your own notes. What you can do is search for the information from platforms such as ChatGPT or Google. But if you've made your own notes, you're more than welcome, and we will have access to see what you're seeing as well. So that shouldn't be a problem.
How can I confirm the booking for the practice exam and the actual exam?
Okay, for both exams, once you have made a booking, I'll start with the practice exam because there's no payment involved. With a practice exam, once you have made a booking, you automatically receive a EISA confirmation the EISA booking confirmation letter. If it is the actual EISA where there's a payment involved, once we have verified the payment, then you will receive the booking confirmation letter.
Where is the SAPC venue and what time should we get there?
Okay, so the SAPC venue is in Pretoria. It's 591 Belvedere Street, Arcadia, and this is the only office we have. We advise that you get here well in advance because you have to be signed in before you are seated. So everyone should be seated by 8 o'clock. So we advise that candidates get here early, but we do share the information on the whole process before the exam.
Can we write at the library?
Yes, you can write at the library. You just have to make sure that where you are seated, there is enough space for your computer and the phone, and there is no background noise during the exam.
Do we have to download an app for the invigilator to access my phone?
No, you just have to have a QR scanning capability on your phone. So the platform that we're using, it is our platform. So once you have logged in on the SAPC website, everything is fine. You will scan the QR code, which gives the invigilator access to the your screen.
Open book, does this mean that our manuals can be used as well as reference material?
Yes. You can, I guess the other facilitators have already made example of the reference material that you can use, but you can also access the manual, which is saved on the website. I will take you through that to check the kind of reference material that's acceptable for the examination.
Can I use my phone to access the SAPC website for the legislation or apps like SAMF guidance?
You can use your computer for that. Your cell phone is not allowed. The reason why we're saying your computer, the invigilator needs to see everything that you're seeing at the time. So if you're using your phone, the first thing is that you're going to affect the proctoring system, which is now the connection between your phone and the laptop. But also the invigilator will not be able to see that. So while invigilating, and the invigilator will only see that you're using a phone, but not what you are using the phone for. That's why you're not allowed to use the phone.
If we are writing at the SAPC offices, will it be a written exam or online?
The same rules apply. It will still be an online exam. Every candidate will have their own computer. They also need to connect to the phone to be able to access the exam. So the same rules applies whether you're writing from our offices. So the only difference is that you're using our equipment instead of your own.
Okay, so the next question was, if I'm writing at the SAPC offices, do I need to bring my own laptop?
No, you don't need to bring your own laptop.
If I don't receive the confirmation booking, how else can I check?
Okay, so if you have booked or for any other reason, you can still see the booking, but you haven't received the booking letter, then you can send an email to us. So this is the email address for all EISA related questions. So it's psp.eisa@sapc.za.org. Then you can send your query there, then you'll get a response.
Can I use a tablet instead of a laptop?
No, you need to use a laptop or a computer.
My certificate is delayed due to payment. Will I still be able to book for an exam?
I would assume that it's a progression. So for those that were registered under the all course, they qualified as a basic, they should be able to book as long as they have been progressed from learner basic. But that only applies to those registered under the all course, not those registered under the occupational certificate.
Both the practice exam and the actual exam open book. And how can we get the link to check device compatibility?
Okay, so the same rules apply. So the whole point of having a practice exam is to prepare you as a candidate for what is to come with the main EISA, but it's also an opportunity for you to make sure that your device is ready. So the same rules will apply. So let me just go back to. I'll also paste the link on the chat on this link to use to check compatibility of your device. So I will share on the chat platform, so you can just make use of this. But we also share this a day before the examination, that you can make sure that your device is compatible.
If you are no longer available for the specific date you've booked, is it possible to rebook for another practice EISA date?
Yes. So once the EISA has been written, I think it's about 4 weeks before the next one, we will share information for candidates to start booking.
If you are writing from your workplace, do we need to find our own invigilator too or not?
So no, we make use of the SAPC invigilators. So if you're writing at a remote um, venue, the invigilator will be invigilating remotely. That's why there are checks to make sure that you are connected to the invigilation platform. So you don't need to find an invigilator, you just have to find a quiet space for you to write, and then the invigilator then will do so remotely.
I would want to use the do not disturb feature on my phone to avoid receiving calls during the exam. Will this not disturb the invigilation process?
It will. You can't have a do not disturb, because we might contact you during the examination, so you have to have access to your phone during that time.
Okay, those are all the questions for now. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll just go through our website just as a demo on how to access. Okay, so to access our website, you can just type SAPC website, but if you know our address, which is www.sapc.za.org, you can do so. But if you type SAPC website, this is what you will see. You just click on the SAPC website, and this is the landing page. So to access any information related to the EISA, you go to registered persons, and there is a tab at the bottom left corner which says learner, student, or trainee. You click on that. So this is information related to learners, but specifically to the EISA. Then you go to assessment. So under assessment, you will see there is information now related to EISA. You have pharmacy assistant basic and post basic. So for you, only this column applies, which is the pharmacy assistant basic. You are able to access for the EISA, and this information will be shared the day before the examination. So for the upcoming EISA, which is on the 10th of Feb, you will be able to access the EISA from here. So next week, you won't see 2 December 2025 anymore. It will be 10 February 2026. So if you want to access the examination from here, you can just click here. But you can also access then the examination using the link that will be provided by us. And then if you want to look at the slides for the workshop, you can access them here. And for the past paper, you are able to access the past paper here, as well as the model answer. So if you want to practice and test yourself, you can access the paper here. Then to review what you have submitted, then you can come here for the answers. You also now have access to the step-by-step video on how to access the EISA itself. This is the information that was presented beginning of the session, that for basic, there's a total of 100 questions, 16 of those being calculations and 84 being general. The fact that it is the overall pass mark is 50%, and you need to achieve 50 for the sub minimum 50 for calculation as well as the general section. And any other information related now to the exam, you'll see the EISA for basic is written over 3.5 hours. The information is here. And then if you want to now look at the manual, which contains now the complete information related to EISA, you can access the manual here. And for the dates, they're here. Sorry, so on the right hand side is for post basic. On the left, you'll see that for practice EISA, we have three scheduled for the year. We have one for 10 Feb, 26 May, and 11 August. And the EISA is 24 March, 21 July, and the 3rd of November. So if you want to find out about anything related to EISA, you first use the manual or you come to this page. If you are unable to get the information, then you can send the email to us. But I do not respond to emails that's asking when is the next EISA, because the information is available on the website. So at the during the examination, for you to access any information at any other time, you can just come here and then log in from here. So you go registered person, then you can access your profile. But for the examination, you cannot access the examination if you use this part. So you either access the examination from here or using the link that we would have provided. But if you go to the normal logging in, you won't be able to access the examination. So that is important to note. Okay, Lucilla, any more questions on your side?
Okay. What happens if my phone rings continuously during the exam since I can't put it on Do Not Disturb? Will this affect me negatively in any way?
I think once you answer, it disconnects. So you can't answer the call. So you can just ignore the call so that it doesn't interfere with the examination. And I think maybe communicate with people that call you that you are writing during that time.
I've passed all my HSA exams, just awaiting my certificate. Will I still be able to book for the exam?
For the practice, you will be able to book, but if the provider hasn't shared the statement of results with us, no, you will not be able to book the exam.
Is the practice EISA handwritten or online?
Everyone, all the candidates writing the EISA, it is online.
And that was seeming the last question.
I'm sorry, Dr. Did you say that was the last question?
Yes, that we have on Teams right now. Don't know if you want to give them a couple more minutes to get more in.
Okay. It's we have 8 minutes left, but in the meantime, while we're waiting for the questions for all candidates, we do have this link. You can scan you can either use the link or scan the QR code for the post-workshop survey while we're waiting for more questions. Natula, if possible, can you post the link on the chat as well?
It's posted. It's the pinned conversation. I'm sure everyone can see it.
Okay, just want I think I forgot the 2 slides. So if you want to follow the SAPC WhatsApp channel, this is the QR code. I think Notula will also paste that on the chat. And just a reminder to everyone that we have our National Pharmacy Conference this year, the fourth one, and it will take place between the 11th and 13th of October 2026. And that will be in Durban at the Nkosi Albert Luthuli International Convention Center complex. If you want to book, please do so on the website. You don't have any more questions on your side, Natula?
Let me just check. Someone says, if I have not completed 6 months of training, can I write the practice ISA?
Yes, you may. So we don't the criteria doesn't necessarily apply fully on the practice. So just for you to make sure you understand how the examination is structured and also to make sure that your equipment is ready for the actual EISA. Thank you.
Some people are not receiving their emails from the SAPC.
Okay, I think the first point is to just make sure that the contact information is updated on the website. However, for this current workshop, only people that meet the requirement to write in March would have received the invitation. So if you're registered under the new occupational certificate and you do not meet you will not meet the requirements by the time we write the EISA in March, you wouldn't have received the information.
If I skip a question, how will I access it again?
Okay, so at the end, so there's one question per page you answer. So if you skip it, it will reappear at the end, but you can't choose which question to answer. So this is automated and randomized. So if you skip it, you'll access it at a later stage when you answering your question.
Do we book for the practice test as well?
Yes, so the information, as I said, so if you do qualify to write the EISA in March, you would have received information related to this workshop as well as the practice EISA. So you just log into the website and book.
Do I have to notify anyone that I won't be able to write for the specific date that I've booked for?
Yes, you must, or should any your plans to write change, please do inform us. So it applies for both the practice as well as the actual EISA.
Okay.
So, yeah, just sorry, Notula. So you can make use of the PSP EISA mailbox to share the details. Always when communicating with us, and it's information or query related to yourself, always either share your full names, P number or ID number, so we're able to assist quickly.
Okay. Are we allowed to book for the ISA now?
Yes, the bookings for the practice EISA will close tomorrow, but for the EISA they haven't opened as yet.
Okay, if we could please go back to the slide with the WhatsApp link. Okay. It's loading some more questions. When using PDF documents on my laptop, may I, for example, use the search function rather on the PDF document, Control F to locate the correct section in the document?
Oh, yes, yes. You may do that.
The date 10 March 2026 for the application, is it the closing date for payment or applying, since the late application date is the 25th of February?
I'm sorry, Notula, I think I missed the question.
The date 10 March for the application, is it the closing date for payment or applying, since the late application date is the 25th of February?
Okay, I think it's so in terms of the EISA, 10 February is the practice EISA, which is next week, Tuesday. The bookings close tomorrow. For the actual EISA, it is on the 24th of March. Information related to when bookings open will be shared, but we haven't opened that as yet. Any more questions? If not, I'll just open it up to the facilitators and other members of the Office of the Registrar to say something if there is anything to say in preparation to closing the session. Okay, if not, it is 12 o'clock. Thank you everyone for making time for the workshop. Should you have any more questions or information, request for information that wasn't covered during the session, then you're more than welcome to make use of the email address provided. And with that, thank you and bye-bye.
Mokano,
Yes, ma'am.
please just continue to the side. We just want to check with the form. If we could just hold a bit, Miss Urban's on her way to you to check the form for us. If you could just keep everyone online, please.
Hi, Natula. Apologies. Candidates can try and access the link again.
Okay, please just share it on the screen.
Yes, I'll do so.
Thank you.
Actually, let me know then if I can close.
It's seemingly working. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you everyone for making time to attend the session. As I said, if you need any information, you have questions that you need clarity on, feel free to send the email. We'll definitely respond to your questions, and have yourself a wonderful afternoon. Bye-bye.